What's going on, guys? Stevo Supremo here, and we are doing the 2024 gaming wrap up of the channel on all the games that I completed and beat and what is going to be my game of the year. Now, I have 28 games here that I beat this year, which, hey, I'm proud of it, pat on my back, but there are people who, like Steph's to Death, she killed like over 50 this past year who just left me in the dust. But I'm proud of the 28. I thought we did pretty well, and I got a good mix of stuff here. Now, so this video doesn't end up being 2 hours long. I'm going to read through the games that I played and beat. I would love to say something about each of them, but it's just going to drag this thing out. So I'm just going to go by one and tell you guys what I beat. And if something jumps out to me, I may say something, but after I do that, we'll then go into the new releases that came out this year, and I'll tell you what my game of the year choice is. So, like I said, starting off, I beat 28 games I have right here in front of me. We started off with Portal 2, and I beat that co-op with my son. We had a great time. Then we went into Guitar Hero Warriors of Rock. You can see my guitar. Like, I love playing Guitar Hero games. I play Clone Hero all the time, and we beat Warriors of Rock on the 360. Loved it. Last Epoch, Guitar Man, Black on the PS2, Aladdin on the Super Nintendo. I always go back and play that like every year. I just love that game, and it's so nostalgic to me. The soundtrack and everything, just awesome platformer. I prefer Aladdin on the Super Nintendo over the Genesis any day. Then we did Tornado Outbreak on the 360. Of course, we had to play the Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree DLC. Loved it. It was incredible. Then we jumped into some Castlevania Legends. We played that on the Nintendo Switch Online store for the Game Boy. So, next up we went on an NES kick. First one starting with the Great Waldo Search. Then we went into some Monopoly Junior. Chippendale Rescue Rangers. Me and my son tried to play co-op together, but couldn't quite get far enough when we were playing two-player. After he went to bed, I went and sat and beat it single player, and it went a little bit smoother. All right, number 13 was Little Mermaid on the NES. I was surprised, little game played through. All these Capcom games on the NES are just classics, though. 14 was Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. 15, Fairly Odd Parents Channel Chasers. If you never heard of this game, it's because it's on a plug and play. I actually found a plug and play at a yard sale during the summertime, and it's one that is actually kind of sought after. It's got a little bit of value in, I think like $20, but most plug and plays aren't worth even picking up. Like, people should pay you to take them. But this thing has a collection of Nickelodeon Nicktoon mini games on it, and one of them was this Fairly Odd Parents Channel Chasers game, which I want to say, and I could be wrong, I think it had 50 levels to it. And it's these type of game where you just go around and you go through the level, which is kind of a maze, and you got some enemies that can get you and stop you and make you have to reset. But you're collecting these certain items. Once you collect them all, you go back to the entrance, and boom, you're off to the next level. But it was fun. I had a good time with it. Then 16, a big one for me personally, Dragon Quest VII. Finally finished that after all these years. If you saw the video, loved it. 17, Deus Ex Human Revolution on the PC we played. Then we finally did some Resident Evil Code Veronica X going into October on the PS2. We did White Day, a Labyrinth Named School. And then Diablo 4, Vessel of Hatred expansion came out. So we went ahead and played through that. And you know what? Fairly good upgrade for the game. I enjoyed the class that it had for it, the Spiritborn class. But again, it's like, is it going to keep me coming back? We'll see what the next season is. But I had a good time with it. Silent Hill Origins we also played in October. First or second Silent Hill game I've ever played. Then we went into Gundam Breaker 4 for number 22. Number 23, Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. Number 24, Simpsons Arcade. We actually have the arcade machine that we purchased, and me and my kids played it co-op and played it all the way through. Number 25, Mafia HD. This one really surprised me. I had this, I think I got it for free on Amazon Prime from Twitch, and I played it through Good Old Games. And I love the time settings, like for these type of games. like Mafia, like LA Noire, and we just don't have a lot of them. And I had a blast with that game. It's like a cover shooter, only it took me halfway through the game to realize that you can actually take cover behind this cover with a cover button. So I must not have been paying attention to during the tutorial, because I was not taking cover behind anything. I was crouching behind stuff, and yeah, it was stupid of me. But after figuring out the cover button, everything was so much smoother. So I'm looking forward to actually playing through the other games in that series now. So Mafia 2 HD and then Mafia 3. Number 26, a huge one for me this year, Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D remake. Love that game to death. Everything seemed perfect with it. The art style fits perfect with the Dragon Quest games. I cannot wait for the first and the second one to get released this year in 2025. I already have goals of wanting to speed run the first one and finally learn how to do it, and maybe take you guys along that journey with me. Number 27, since it was Christmas, we played some Home Alone on the Super Nintendo. And last but not least, the final game of the year was Stalker 2 Shadows of Chernobyl. Now, this was an interesting one because I actually bought the Game Pass for Xbox on my PC in order to play through Indiana Jones. You know, it was getting some pretty good praise out there, and people saying how great of a game it was. So I bought the Game Pass in order to play that. Put about 5 hours into it, and I was just bored to death. I'm starting to think, how is this game getting so much praise? Because it was just extremely boring to me. So I put that down and picked up Stalker 2. And that's how I started playing Stalker. It's like, well, since I got the Game Pass for another month here, might as well find a game to play. And we chose Stalker 2. So with that being said, those are the 28 games we beat this year. And if we go through the list, it's not a lot of new releases. I don't play a ton of new releases unless it's something I desperately want to get, because normally I'm pretty good at being patient and waiting until there's a price drop on something. I don't need to pay $70 for a new release these days. I'm very content with waiting until they drop to 40 or even lower. But as far as new releases this year, the first one we played was Last Epoch, and it looks like going down. I'm not going to count the Elden Ring DLC. I just don't think that's fair because it's DLC. And then next, Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. After that was Vessel of Hatred. That's an expansion too, so I'm not going to count that. Gundam Breaker 4, Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D Remake, and Stalker 2. So only like 6 new releases that came out this year is what we played. So all the variety we have there for new releases. But when it came down to it, it was going to be between 3 games. Is it going to be Zelda? Is it going to be Dragon Quest? And surprisingly, out of nowhere, from a series I never played, was it going to be Stalker 2. Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, while I had a good time with it, the creating items with the Tri-Rod is just not as fun as actual combat to me, with playing as Link and chopping through enemies and unlocking all your items and utilizing them. Just wasn't as fun. The boss fights were really creative up until the very end. No, I really don't want to do any spoilers in case no one hasn't played it yet. But that final boss fight, I felt like I was more of a spectator than the one actually doing the work and saving the world. So that was really disappointing to me, that final boss fight, after the lead up with all the other really cool boss fights. So Echoes of Wisdom had to get the boot from getting the number 1 choice. So it's left us with Stalker 2 and Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D Remake. And guys, I love Dragon Quest. It is like my top tier JRPG. It's between that and Xenoblade, like back and forth, which one takes it. And it's generally the one that comes out with a new release that year. It's like, all right, this is my favorite one again. And I just love just the pure turn-based combat, the visual style of that game, the remake. They just nailed everything. The music, incredible. I'm still working on trying to platinum it because that's how much I love the game. But Stalker 2, is my 2024 game of the year. It beat out Dragon Quest, a game that I didn't even plan on playing this year. I never played the initial entries or anything with Stalker before. I actually have again, got it for free off of Amazon, the first one, and downloaded it when Stalker 2 came out. I was seeing all the hype around it online. I'm like, okay, let me download the first one and dabble in it. I think I played 10 minutes of it. It's like, okay, I see what it's about, and didn't play it anymore. But with downloading the Game Pass and Indiana Jones disappointing me, I was like, I do not want to waste this, and let's just boot up Stalker 2 since it had so much hype around it. And I just sunk so many hours into that game within like a 2.5 week period. It was insane, like over 80 something hours. So Stalker 2, what is it? If you've never heard of the series before, I'm not the biggest person on the knowledge of this series or franchise. I just know it was made by a Ukrainian company. Like in the middle of a war out there, they're having all these issues. I know it had a bunch of delays, but the game takes place in this area called the Zone. And if you're into Fallout or anything like that, it's probably the most similar type of thing you can compare Stalker 2. Just Stalker 2 is a more hardcore version of that. But it takes place in this zone where it kind of plays off the events, I guess, of like Chernobyl with the nuclear event happening out there and the effects that it has on this zone. Now, people are actually inhabiting this zone because these things called anomalies were created. So people are trying to figure out these special things that are going on with these anomalies, and you got your different factions battling over certain things in the zone. It's just like in a more adult version of Fallout, because you know how Fallout has kind of all that comedy and stuff in there, which this one has some of that too. But it's just so much more hardcore, and it feels like it's way bigger. It's a first-person shooter, but it doesn't have the RPG elements, so to say, as a Fallout game. You're in there as a stalker. You're exploring the zone. You can choose which factions or what factions you don't want to help. You can just do your own thing, completing missions, and the map is just massive. You're exploring and you're trying to survive. And normally I don't like survival type games, but this one doesn't hammer you over the head with constantly having to feed or drink water like every 2 minutes. Like, it's well paced in how everything does. The only thing that really annoyed me in the game was getting over encumbered. Yes, there's an inventory type system in it, and you can only carry so many items, and if you do, it's going to slow you down. And when your main mode of transportation in the game is walking from one area to another can take a while, especially when you're over encumbered. So that's where your decision making and stuff comes into play in this game. Am I going to pick this new weapon up that I just picked up, or drop it and hope to come back and get it later on? It's just, you have to make all these decisions. Am I going to drop bandages that are weighing me down in order to carry that weapon back to my storage, or so I can repair it, and all this stuff? There's so little many intricate things in this game that I could talk about. It deserves a video on its own, but it just really shocked me. The zone is a living world. You'll be walking around, and there could be a group of a faction walking around you can stop and talk to. And then all of a sudden they run into some of the enemy creatures in the game, and they fight them off, and you're like, yeah, we helped each other out. And then you might leave and come back, and they might have gotten in another fight while you were gone, and you see their dead bodies sitting there. So the people you just ran into could be dead. So it's a living world, living, breathing world like that. So it is just awesome, and it got me hooked. And it got me hooked in a sense. Again, I love looters, and in this game you're finding new gas mask helmets and stuff you can wear, body armor and stuff you can wear, your weapons, and these artifacts that you can equip to your character that can have positive and negative effects to give them abilities where their endurance is stronger, where you got stronger physical protection and stuff like that. But you build up radiation and everything if you use too many of them. It's just a back and forth battle with a lot of decisions, and I loved exploring and finding new weapons and new gear. And that's kind of where the RPG elements take place in this game. You don't have skill points or anything to make your guy stronger or your character, but you start finding better gear and better weapons, better ammo, to help fight your enemies in the later game. First, you'll be fighting enemies that have just regular clothes on, like me. Then later on in the game, you'll see someone with a helmet on. So you can't just one tap them headshot, you have to do two. Then further on, they can have exoskeletons on. So those are the ways that it kind of beefs up the difficulty and challenges you more further on into the end game. Not even mentioning the creatures that go through the game that have been affected by the radiation that happened from the event. You'll be running into kind of like mutated creatures and stuff. And the story. The story is just really crazy, but it just had me hooked and I couldn't put it down. The one thing you have to be aware of, though, is the game has been plagued for like having a bunch of glitches and stuff, which, hey, I accept. Those guys, they have a lot of stuff going on over there in the Ukraine area right now. But for me personally, I didn't really run into a whole lot of bugs. I just had one major one, and that made me lose over 4 hours of progress. I was playing the game, was creating save states, and then all of a sudden my game crashed. And when I went to boot it up, all my save states for like the last 4 hours were gone. They disappeared. Nada. So it was pretty irritating to go through that. Other than that, the final like hour or two of the game, my frame rates were starting to drop like crazy from the area I was in. Now, I played it on PC. If you're playing it on console, you might not have any of these issues, but it was more of a PC thing through Game Pass through me. So just beware. There could be some bugs and stuff like that in the game. And sometimes those bugs you can use to your advantages. I don't know how AI was programmed in this game, but when it comes to the mutated creatures, jumping up to a piece of elevation, even if you're just on a little box, like can be so overpowered because sometimes they just all of a sudden forget you're there and you can just start shooting them because they don't know what boxes are. So little things like that, but it didn't affect it for me because I still loved it. I love the story taking place, and yeah, that's why Stalker 2 was my game of the year. So what did you guys play this year? What was your game of the year? I've already been seeing a bunch of videos on it, and I love it. I love seeing the variety out there of what people played and just how everyone just has different tastes. And even if I was going to pick even from classic stuff, like all the old school games that I beat, I still think Stalker 2 would have taken it. It'd be between that, Resident Evil Code Veronica X. Yeah, Stalker 2 still might take it, or Dragon Quest 7. It'd be a close one. But hands down, Stalker 2 for my game of the year last year. And I can't wait to see like what DLC and stuff they come out with it. So I'm looking forward to it. So thank you guys for watching. Let's get it done in 2025. And I'll see you in the next one.